Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks provides unique mentoring opportunities to enhance your modeling skills by connecting with talented modelers and manufacturers from around the globe who generously share their knowledge and artistic expertise. Build your confidence, refine modeling techniques, and share your projects with a supportive community of fellow modelers, all while enjoying the world's most rewarding hobby. Join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Zoom and YouTube for our free live program. Missed a program? No problem. Individual show segments are uploaded to YouTube for convenient on-demand viewing. Be sure to connect with the New Tracks community by joining the New Tracks Facebook page, where you can interact with other modelers and see what they are modeling. Visit our website at www.newtracksmodeling.com, where you'll find information about upcoming events and the latest issue of our monthly newsletter, Observations. And now, here is the host of New Tracks Modeling, Tom Farrell.
Good evening, and welcome to New Tracks Modeling. We're coming to you live on Zoom and YouTube, as we do every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're glad you're joining us this evening. Tonight's broadcast is part of a growing platform founded by Jim Kello, whose vision was to create a collaborative educational space where modelers of all experience levels could come together to learn, share, and grow. That mission lives on through our strong mentorship community, where experienced hobbyists share their skills and confidence in model railroading. New Tracks Modeling extends beyond this live program. We're proud to support an active Facebook page, a dedicated website, and the widely read Observations newsletter, which now reaches over 8,500 subscribers. The May issue of the Observations newsletter will be its final edition, marking the end of an era. But it's not farewell, it's an upgrade. We're proud to announce the launch of New Tracks Modeler, a brand new online magazine that will take our content, community, and creativity to the next level. Stay tuned as we evolve, offering even more in-depth articles, expert tips, and inspiring stories, all designed to support and celebrate the model railroading hobby we share. We're also excited to continue growing the New Tracks Modeling Scholarship Program, an initiative you'll learn more about later in the show. Everything we offer is free to our participants, powered entirely by a team of passionate volunteers committed to enriching the model railroading hobby. Before we begin tonight's lineup, we'd like to thank our sponsor of the show, Brennan's Model Railroading.
Tonight's New Tracks Modeling Meetup is sponsored by Brennan's Model Railroading. For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products focused on the O-scale market. Their flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. The prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, Brennan's has developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Brennan's also has craftsman kits that anyone can build. The complete photographically illustrated instructions assume you've never done this before, and explain in step-by-step detail how to create an outstanding model. The Frank Ellison Tribute series of kits are amazing additions to any layout. These kits take Frank Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level using modern methods and materials with Dennis Brennan's additional details and amazing instructions. See the complete line of products on the Brennan's Model Railroading website. Use the QR code to visit.
As I say every week, please support our sponsors, in particular the sponsor of the show, Brennan's Model Railroading. Now let's have a look and see what's ahead in this evening's program. First up on News and Views and N Scale, we have Bernie Kritzer. He's going to do an overview of his National Capital Trains hobby shop and give us a little update on some of the new products and things that are happening in N Scale today. We have our Part 4 final of the O-Scale Scratch Build by our very own Phil Edholm. He's the producer of the show, Scratch Building the Agnew Station. This is a marvelous undertaking of just really a beautiful kit, a beautiful model. And then Martin Brechbiel, part 2 of the offices of Deckard and Batty. Of course, Martin is a regular on the show and a world-class modeler. And then Chris Course with our new tracks, My Build. This is one of the most popular shows that we have on the program, and showcases our modelers' builds. So participation by everybody. But before we get rolling, I'd like to highlight our New Tracks Modeling Scholarship Program. Here's a brief video introduction and I'll say a few words about this initiative.
Are you a model railroader going to college in academic year 2025-26? If you are pursuing a STEAM degree, apply for the New Tracks Modeling Mentoring Scholarship. For the 2025-26 academic year, 3 $2,000 scholarships will be available. You can apply online at the QR code shown or on the New Tracks Modeling website. Model railroaders can support the New Tracks Modeling Mentoring Scholarship, the only national scholarships for model railroaders from a nonprofit organization. Donate online on Zephy. All donations are tax deductible.
Now here's an interesting quandary we have with our New Tracks mentoring scholarship. We continue to receive donations, and we thank everyone for the donations, but we are not getting the applicants. And I've reached out to my alma mater, Penn State, and I didn't get any response. Either we have a lot of wealthy students, or the students just aren't interested. The parents are paying and writing the checks. I don't know, but we want to give out 3 scholarships this year at $2,000 each. Last year we did the same, $6,000 in total scholarships. We almost have 2026 covered in our treasury. I'm the treasurer of the scholarship. We'd like to give out scholarships to new people. We don't want to just keep giving it to the people that have received them in the past. So I want to reach out to our Zoomers and our YouTube people. If you know college students, you know a STEM student, reach out, have them apply. They just go on to our website, find the application there, apply, and pick up potentially a $2,000 scholarship to assist in the payment of their education. So now I'd like to start the show, and first up is Bernie Kritzer, National Capital Trains. Bernie, if we could spot him, it's under Debbie and Bernie there. You're muted. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. And so tell us, where are you hailing from at the moment?
National Capital Trains Company was established in 1989. At the time, we had the view that the District of Columbia and the whole general Washington, D.C. area, Virginia to Maryland, had virtually no hobby shops that dealt with scaled trains. And you had to go to the traditional brick and mortar shop. The nearest one was Baltimore, and there was one in Richmond. So what we decided was we would specialize on a much more limited level, because I had previous, other employment on a full-time basis. And we'd go to shows and do a little bit of mail order, mainly selling 2 things. One, high quality HO plastic diesels, and 2, high quality N scale diesels. And we added in for the spice a little bit of narrow gauge that initially, with some SN3 narrow gauge, when that died out, we carried the Blackstone models. And, we were quite busy with that and sound and the like. So since then, I'd say in the last 10 years, we've been almost exclusively in scale. Perhaps, in a good year, 10% of our sales are everything else, meaning HO, S gauge, and O gauge.
Are you a modeler yourself? Do you model N scale?
I have, as far as time, I'm not allowed to, it doesn't permit me to do as many things as I want, either going to shows or filling orders. But I've had two areas on model. I have a small ON3 layout that's about 2.5 by 12, which, not much is happening there. And then in N scale, we've assembled small display layouts that we use when we go to shows. In fact, one of the most effective things was probably 20 years ago. I threw some Kato unit track on a table, 2 loops of track, and I started to run some trains. That led to a bigger table where we could run up to 6 loops of track plus 2 trolleys, and we could run in DCC, sound, or analog. Recent times, with availability of new products, we've set up a little 16 by 36, shelf type layout that we take to the shows, and we basically have trams on there, and the 3 curved radiuses are 7, 6, and 4 3/4, and we have found an enormous amount of interest there, with people always wanting to buy trams or minor little industrial locos, and so we keep busy with all of those activities.
Yeah, I myself started in N scale back in 1967. It was only brought over here in this country in 1965. And in 67, it was the Aurora postage stamp. And then from there, there were Fleischmann and Arnold Rapido, and then it went to Concord, and then Atlas, and then Cato was in secret making them for Atlas, I guess. And then, of course, they introduced their own brand in the US. And I guess they're still the dominant manufacturer, I would assume. Cato is the correct.
Yes. But the interesting thing there, and my wife and I in 2023 spent 2 weeks in Japan. And so we got to observe a lot of things. And Kato is one of the 2 largest manufacturers in Japan. The largest is a company called Tomix. They have a division that does toys, but Tomix in scale, it's probably 5 to 8 times the size of Kato. And there's also a lot of smaller companies like Green, Max, and IMAX. And it's very interesting because you have a very robust N-scale market in Japan, because there's 3 islands and 130 million people. So they have a very limited amount of space in which to do things, other than when they have clubs and dioramas. So we've now seen this, take over. We were in the first phase a number of years ago of the modules, which were the 2x4 modules, and guys would come with 30 or 40 of these things, hook them together, and run on the weekend. From there, we went to the tabletop, with the cubes that were 1.5 by 2 feet, and that is still TT, they call it, and that's extraordinarily active. Then lastly, we have little diorama type layouts, 16 by 30, 24 by 30, and people are getting involved in those because their space is limited, or in the case as the population gets older, a lot of people don't want to carry around 2x4 modules, so they go to either tabletop or smaller.
Yeah, I myself still have an N-track module that I drag out once a year to a show in Indianapolis. And then they have a thing called T-track.
Yes.
And then Cato has these little things they've made for children. We had Charlie, this marketing manager for Cato, on the show about 2 months ago. They give away these little tiny, I don't know the exact size, but they're approximately 1 foot by 1 foot. And the children put them together and link them together like a modular layout to
Yes,
try to get
exactly.
the youth in model railroading.
And it's worked in different parts of the country, and countries, I should say. In Japan, it's a tremendous success, and I often get on YouTube and I watch the Japanese train shows with English subtitles, and you see a lot of the things you've talked about. In addition to which, you have a certain amount of modules now in Great Britain and in Germany. I can't speak to China, although I'm told that there's a fairly active railroad community on the east coast of China. And there's some very good product that Bachmann makes for the Chinese market as well.
One of the major model railroading magazines, I don't recall which, in the one, I don't know if it was RMC or Model Railroader, somebody addressed the fact that micro layouts and N scale and tabletop are going to become more and more prevalent in the United States because less people are committing to these very large layouts like the one behind me that you can't see. So I think N scale has a robust future, and people like our Steve Sherrill pushing ON18, which basically runs on N scale 9mm between the rails track, has a solid future, would you say?
Yes, in fact, I had to attend a wedding that weekend, or I would come up to Steve's first meet, which was, I understand, a tremendous success, and brought up a small 16 by 30 layout. And I'll be obviously doing it in the future years as we grow this.
In Ransom, West Virginia, I made the 11-hour drive. It was a great time, and a lot of micro layouts there, and just absolutely stunning models. And these Caddo drives that lots of people are, one of the future areas of growth for model railroading are this 3D printing of these shells that sit on mechanisms like the Caddo drive. There's some number, I can't recall the numbers, like 571 or whatever the drive is, but they're bulletproof drives. I mean, Caddo will run and run and run and run forever. You know, they're just super high quality.
Yes, in fact, you just captured the next statement I was going to make with these small drives. Caddo is the leader. Tomex is not far behind. In Tomex's case, they make a load of different diesels and a load of different streetcars, and then they sell the drive separately. So somebody can, buy the engine for 20 or 30 bucks in Japan, dollars equivalent, in yen equivalent, and then later they can buy this drive for a few dollars.
A lot of people are doing that in the U.S. and Tomex. I didn't know. I've seen some Cato structures, pre-assembled structures. I mean, I'm not in buying anything in N scale anymore, but I see Tomex. I see that name on some of the Cato structures. So maybe they're I don't know. You don't see a lot of Tomex in the U.S. unless it's through Cato, I think. I don't know if they have a handshake or no.
No, that's not the relationship. Tomex has an exclusive with Walthers. Walthers is the exclusive distributor. Caddo USA, which is a subsidiary of the parent, Caddo Japan, they operate through 5 or 6 U.S. distributors, and they do some direct sales of parts, special diesels cooked with sound.
Well, let's take a quick look at your website and just peruse the. Can everybody see that? Everybody see that website? Yes? No? I need somebody to.
Yes.
Too small. Too small.
It's small. Okay, I have it full screen here. Let me try again here. One moment. Any better?
Hit the 3 dots on the upper right, and you can blow it. Yeah, the 3 dots, and it says get the zoom it to down to about 150%. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
No,
how's that?
You won't be able. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So, Bernie, basically you say 90% of your sales are N scale. Let's just take a walk through. I know you don't have any photos on here, but let's just talk in general. So these are the brands, the Cato and Atlas are the primary 2 brands right now that you carry. Is that correct?
Yes, I also carry a smaller amount of Broadway Limited, which does both HO and N scale, and they do very good, particularly some of the steam engines that Broadway has brought out that not only have DCC and sound, but actually have steam, smoke. And they're quite good. And then Rapido does excellent work. He's primarily an HO, but when he does something in N scale, it's terrific. I said as an example, when he did the Canadians, he used FP9s for all phases, early, modern, and then, the Via. And those cars are like a work of art.
Now, I assume Kato makes everything in Japan, and
Yes.
Atlas is probably China, would be my guess.
Yes.
Right? And Broadway Limited, I know, is China, right?
Yes.
But what is Fox Valley Models?
Fox Valley basically was sold to a company called Scale Trends, another small but super high quality outfit. They bring in a large amount of HO and a smaller amount of N scale. Their workmanship is incredible. They started out in both HO and N scale by doing the Pearl 3-unit Union Pacific big blow turbine, which is, a phenomenal model. All these guys over the years who paid $2,000-$3,000 for a brass one in HO. You look at this one, and it's just as detailed, and it operates.
And the N scale steam locomotives, I know Bachmann made a lot of those too. You're not carrying Bachmann or no?
They carry them, but when you come to having a choice, and particularly when you're talking about some of the items that are out of China, if I pay X, somebody's going to pay X minus or X minus minus. So you never know what happens because there's such huge volumes that if there's any surplus, they just have a massive sale and the price, plunges. Whereas Atlas, you don't have that problem, nor Microtrains, which is US.
Yeah.
Mercado.
Let's talk a minute about the N scale brass.
Glad you should mention that.
It's not coming up. I thought I was looking at that earlier today, but what I was shocked is that, here they are. I was thinking that some of these didn't look too bad for brass. 275 for a brass Mikado is, for a brass locomotive, that's pretty reasonable, I think, yeah?
Yes, most of the brass was done first in Japan, and the company KMT did it for Hallmark. Then Hallmark shipped it to Korea, and then Key Imports, who did loads of HO&O, got involved and built some really outstanding models for the Pennsylvania Railroad and steam, as well as the GG1. And they did a phenomenal amount of Pennsylvania and Southern Pacific models. So if the guy wanted to model all the cab forwards, you could get those, or you wanted to model the top Pennsy locomotives, the 4464 or the 6446. You had a tremendous opportunity to get them. The good thing was that they were generally accurate, and they most of them had very good paint. The more drawback is that you had to do a lot of tinkering with the mechanism to get it up to the point where it might compete with a Kato model. Now, that was when they came. This was in the late 90s, and maybe it was all done by about 2002.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, most of those models are the newest models are probably around 20 years old. Most of them are in the 30 and 40 year age.
So these aren't necessarily new. They are new production runs. They may be new in the box, but some of them are older, you're saying, yeah?
Yeah, 80-90% of what I have sold in N-scale brass was new in the box. There were shelf queens, to be, very candid.
Are the Koreans still making brass locomotives?
Yeah, they still are, but the prices have become so prohibitive. And that comes from essentially the demand for any type of skilled labor where somebody can fabricate this and they can solder, where they shipped over to the high-tech industries, where you can do value added, in electronics or other industries.
Does Japan still make brass locomotives?
Yeah, they make a small amount. In my trip to Japan, I was able to locate, the traditional builder, Kasumi. They still do models. So if you wanted an HO, a model of the D51 Mikado, which is one of the prevalent steam locomotives, or the C Hudson class, or the 280, you could get one with fully equalized drive, but you may be paying in US dollars $2,500 for it, or the top express, Japanese bullet trains. They had them and they were exquisite in brass with phenomenal paint jobs, but you're going to be paying enormous dollars.
So it's safe to say that the high-end N scale is pretty much like the high-end Lionel. They're making exquisite locomotives, but you're paying for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say in the steam locomotives,
Yeah.
the highest end and N scale has been something like the Broadway Big Boy, the Broadway Reading T1, and the NNW 2882. Then Kato is set it one level above that. They've done the Union Pacific Big Boy, Union Pacific FEF3 in both the black and the excursion, and they've done the GS4 Daylight when matching passenger cars.
Mhm.
Those models, I would say, are probably the pinnacle. With the Big Boy having two motors, and it has the ability to pull up to 15 pounds of weight.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just intricate engineering. And those of you who like to, look at the YouTube late at night, and when everybody's asleep, you can get on the YouTube and Google and just say Kato N scale or Kato Big Boy, and you can see some incredible videos.
Is Microtrain still the king dog in making N-scale freight cars?
They're among the top ones.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to retain their position because many of the freight cars outside of the ones that Tomex and Kato make are going to be coming out of China, and the price on those will go up more.
The Microtrains are still made in, where is it, Portland?
Oregon. Yeah, in Oregon.
Yeah.
And they're terrific, and they do a really good job. And the paintwork and lettering are exquisite. You can't beat the laser applied graphics they do.
I have probably 200 of them. And then the passenger cars, I have a lot of Kato ones. Looks like Atlas was making a passenger car now. Is that right?
Everybody makes small runs. Graffito has tried a couple. Microtrains now pretty much does the heavyweights. Broadway is getting into it a little bit over time. And then Kato makes what they call the name trains. And those would be a 10-car Southern Pacific Daylight. You could add, the 2-car add-ons. City of Los Angeles, 11-car. Broadway Limited, 10 cars with a 4-car add-on. Super Chief, California Zephyr, and the list goes on. And those items you can never keep in stock. And the amount of people who love those and just run those. And there's a few guys who display them, but the main thing here is that the bulk of my customers in N-scale, and I see them regularly, either at a show or I talk to them on the phone and run into them, they use this stuff. They operate. They might only have a space 4x8, but they run, beautiful layouts, 2 or 3 trains. They do a heck of a lot of work and are very excited about it. And that's been one of the things that has really attracted me over the years to N-scale. It's a level of excitement that I haven't seen matched except for maybe HL in the early 1950s.
I mean, I'm looking at this with wide open eyes. I honestly didn't know that Microtrains made a passenger car and they made a heavyweight passenger car. The heavyweights that I have are the older, they're not so detailed, in N scale. I can't remember who made them, but they were okay. But I'm sure if Microtrains make them, I'm sure they knock your eyes out. Is that right?
Yes. In fact, I just came in today, a circus train called Straight's Circus, 5-car set with observation and the other items. They've also made some, really good sets in Pennsylvania, Baltimore, and Ohio. And sometimes when those things are popular, they add an extra car. But you get the baggage or the baggage mail. You get a couple of a diner, and you get a couple of coaches, and you get an observation. And people love that. I mean, the railroads like Penn Central, Amtrak, Pennsylvania, Santa Fe, they're just extraordinarily popular.
I have to say, I don't think the pricing's all that bad for this stuff. I mean, you get a whole set for $125. That's pretty reasonable,
Yeah, I think so.
I think N-scale's alive and well. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I'll tell you something now. that I've noticed over 35 years. In the times we've had some economic concerns in this country, or, there were recessions, my train business and some of my colleagues has just kept going. And sometimes it's going even better than when there's, full-time prosperity, because people will always be at home. They may not be able to afford the big vacation or the car, but they will be able to afford reasonably priced, high quality trains.
There's always room for trains and restaurants.
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, this has been really interesting for me because as a past N scaler, it was a real eye opener that, overall things are priced pretty reasonable. There's a sneaky brass locomotives in there that are priced reasonable. And then the fact that Cato, is still a strong player, and Broadway Limited dabbles in it. It has reason to be the number 2 scale and continue that position, and it's going to grow, because if the magazines are correct, people don't necessarily have room for these massive layouts anymore.
Yeah, Tom, I'll add 2 things, and I'll close. One of the fastest growing segments that I have is I bring in from Japan directly a load of Kato-built Japanese name trains, locomotives, diesels, cars, etc., and they make phenomenal European trains like the French high speed, the German high speed. It's amazing the amount of interest in the world because people have traveled so much. And then lastly, it's always my pleasure, like tonight, to participate first with Jim Kello and now with you. And I'm always here, available if anybody has questions, or if the group needs any support in any area. I'm more than glad to do that.
Well, thank you for your participation this evening, and would like to have you on again, and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. Be well.
Well, next we have our very own Phil Edholm in his final part 4, scratch building the Agnew station. But before we have Phil on, I'd like to run our scholarship video. Unless I already did that, which I did twice in a week here. There we go.
National Capital Trains is the largest supplier of N-scale modeling products in the state of Virginia. We have been in business since 1989. We carry a full line of modeling products, specializing in N and HON3 scales. We carry a large selection of competitively priced high-quality N-scale products from Atlas, Bachmann, Digitrax, Intermountain, Cato, Microtrains, NCE, Pico, Rapido, Soundtrax, as well as Brass. For foreign railroad train aficionados, we offer a wide selection of Japanese and European prototype trains. We are located 20 miles from Washington, D.C. in Springfield, Virginia. We are a short 7-minute drive off Interstate 95. Stop in and see us for the best in N-scale. We also have online ordering on our website, including great prices and expert advice. Call us for your N-scale modeling needs and advice. Use the QR code to visit our website. We look forward to serving you.
I apologize for the confusion. I have a script, and after all, I'm just a talking head. So, Phil, you're on.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, I just got a little out of order. No big deal. It happens to all of us. So this evening, I'm going to finish off the presentation I've been doing on building a station in O scale. So this is part 4 of building the Agnews / Pajaro station. The Agnew station actually is in Santa Clara, California. It was known as the railroad stop for the Great Asylum for the Insane, which was actually known as Agnew's, the hospital, state hospital there. So tonight I'm going to talk about 3 things: a little bit about lighting, a little bit about the roof, and a little bit about the decks in front. So it's going to be a fairly short wrap up tonight. So from a building perspective, I wanted a ceiling, but again, the idea with this build was not to build something that you took the roof off and admired how closely it was stick built to the prototype, but rather something that was on the layout, and people actually looked at it as a structure, was something that looked really good without having to go through a huge amount of cost and effort to build out the interior. So we talked a bit about how the interior was done. You can see that on the left, using the printed interiors. And what I wanted to achieve was kind of what was achieved on the right here, which is uniform lighting, but something that was, nicely colored, soft white, would look like something that could have existed, back in the 20s or 30s. One of the things I really wanted to do is I didn't want to do raw LEDs and just have them hanging up there, or to buy some of the online fixtures. The way they looked, I didn't think they looked that good for being inside of a building. So I decided to go ahead and do the roof and build the light fixtures myself. And I thought the best way to do that was, again, to use the 3D printer. What I find is the filament printer is great for doing a lot of these little things that we used to do in wood. It would take a lot of time to do effectively in wood, or maybe even in brass with soldering. You can now do them very quickly. So I'll talk a little bit about how that was done. So this was actually the lighting. Now, notice the lighting doesn't exist in the left area. That's actually the baggage room. I made an executive decision to not light the baggage room at all. And in fact, if you notice in the bottom there's a hole. That's actually where the lighting wires go through and actually come into the building. So I took advantage of the fact that that room could be closed up without any real impact of the attractiveness of the overall structure. So what you see on the right are actually the two lighting panels, pulled out and sitting on top of the model. And on the left, you actually see them installed. And they don't really look pretty from the top. This intent here is not to build something that looks pretty, because people, quite frankly, won't see it. So these are a couple more pictures of that. The lighting panels are actually wired together into a single unit. What you see on the right here is kind of how that top piece is built out to support it. So what I did was, after I printed the panels to the size that I wanted them to be, where they would fit into the model in the right place, then I basically I actually taped a block of wood on there, moved them up and down until I got the height where I wanted. And then I actually cut some blocks of wood and glued them on and put these little supports on. So they literally just sit in there. They're not physically attached. They just sit into the unit. So to do this, basically you have three pieces. The first thing you have to do is you have to actually build and design and then print the ceiling itself. And this is really very easy. What you see on the left here is the flat ceiling that was in the waiting room. The one on the right is actually the ceiling in the office. And what I realized was I wanted the ceiling to be higher than the windows were in the front. So as I built this, I put a little tilt on the front so it would line up with the windows in the front that were actually down, because they're under the roof line of the building. And then you'll notice at the back on the left side of this, there's a little piece here. Those actually line up with that 3D printed mail sorting, so that it's kind of a continuous fitment in the back. So you actually don't see the wood blocking that's in there on the wall. So what basically, you lay these out to the size that you want. They're done at about 2 millimeters thick. Then the next step you do is you put in the lights. So I decided I wanted 6 lights in both of these, and I put in the lighting pattern you can see here. Once the light pattern's designed, then you can put in essentially these cuts that cut out the panels in the roof. So the roof will have panels and look like a paneled roof. Those are actually really simple to do. I'm using against FreeCAD, but if you use any of the drawing CAD programs, what I did was I used an octagon element, put those in a line, separated them by a distance, and then just used that to remove the material to make these cuts across. And you kind of see up here on the upper right the shape that gives you, and those then just line up to give you this nice kind of pattern of what today we kind of call a drop-in ceiling. Back in the day, they were kind of more of a carved, panelized ceiling. The second element is the lights themselves. Now, one of the things I did was I bought a bunch of 3 millimeter pre-wired soft white LEDs. You can see them down on the bottom left. 30 pieces for I think $9. So not very bad. Probably a little bit more now there because they do come from China. In order to use those, I actually first tried designing the fixture with them inserted from the bottom. And what I found was it's hard to get the wire through. It's hard to build it, so I enclosed it. So I decided the right way to do this was actually to make it so you insert the light bulb from the top. So what you see on the left here is you see the design where actually the hole there is where the LED is going to come through, and it's going to be pushed down in from the top. What I put here in the middle, this is actually in FreeCAD and Fusion 360 or any of the other drawing programs. What you do is you do a drawing around, there's a vertical axis here, the y-axis, and the drawing is actually done around that axis, and then you can use a rotate function to rotate that, and that creates this complete image. So if you look right here where that line is, that's actually in the CAD program where this is drawn. And then what the CAD program will do is rotate that around the axis and create it. So you notice what I did with blue here is actually a construction image. So that's actually not something to print. It's just there as a space holder. And that's actually the shape of the LED. So what I designed was this little piece to go around it and fit with a little shoulder right here. Then you push the LED down in from the top. It hits on the shoulder and sits right inside that hole right in here. One of the things I've done here, this is all done in filament printing. So with filament printing, I didn't want to do supports in here because they would have been very challenging to get out. So generally you can do about 50 degrees. These are 45 degrees. At 45 degrees, you actually don't need supports. So what you can see on the right here, this is actually in Cura, which is the slicing program you use to go from the object that the CAD program creates that uses that and creates the instructions to the printer to squeeze the toothpaste tube out in the right places. So what you see here, this is kind of printing up the line right about here, and there are no supports inside underneath. And you notice there are no supports up here, but you notice at the top, it's a fairly wide diameter hole, and this shaft is fairly wide. But again, that's up fairly high in the structure where it's not really all that visible when you look in from the walls. After I put these together, put the LEDs, looked at them, I still didn't like the way the light looked inside. It still was a little too harsh. So I decided I had some clear filament I've used for some other projects. So I decided to actually make a lens. And so you notice this is actually the same LED shape, and it's lined out to the same place where I've actually got the dimensions of where the other piece will be. What it's designed is basically a 45-degree angle, slightly rounded face, and it'll fit right in there. And in fact, what happened was after I printed those, they just literally pop in here. This clear element here is not even glued in. It just pops in. I think one of them I had to use a little bit of canopy glue. So essentially now you've got three pieces. You've got the ceiling itself, you've got the light fixture, and you've got the lens. The ceiling was done again with that caramel paint and dark dry brushing. Creates kind of the look you would have had in a dark wood ceiling that typically was put into a lot of buildings. These light fixtures were painted black just with rattle can flat black spray, and then the hood itself was painted with some brass or bronze acrylic paint I had. So this was actually painted, to just hand painted to look like a regular fixture. After they dried, the LED was already put in. I popped in the lens. So what you have now is you basically have 6 LEDs. The LEDs have a built-in resistor, but like most LEDs, the resistor that's built in keeps them fairly bright. What I found was you could actually daisy chain 3 of these and use them together on 12 volts, and they had a nice kind of pleasant lighting for inside of a building. You don't want super bright lights. You want it to be a little subdued. So again, if the wires were coming through here, what I did was just daisy chain them. So I took the positive of one side to the negative of the next one. Same thing here. You see brown to black wire, brown to black wire. And then those wires are wired together from these 2 pairs, 2 sets of wires, and the same on the other side to create the wires. And you can see here, pretty crude, this carrier that's designed to go in there and carry the roof. I have the wall on one side. I put a piece of wood on the other side. This is actually notched down because it has to fit in underneath the roofing. There's a roof piece on that side, but those hold this structure here the right distance up off the floor, so it looks right. And what that does is it gives you a combination of what I like, which is if you bend down and you look at this from a low angle, you actually see light fixtures, and it's especially true when you look through the office window. I had a hard time getting the focus inside the building over here on the left, but in the office window, you can really see that you look in and you actually see the light fixtures. Maybe more light fixtures than you probably would have had at that time, but it does give a nice uniform lighting. The final piece of the building was the roof. Again, I could have done this by making some angle braces. But nice thing with a 3D printer is it literally takes about 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes to design this. Once you do that, you get the angles exactly right to exactly match what's on the building. And then you can print out, 3 or 4 of these braces. One of the things you'll notice is that in order to keep these the right distance back to make the roof line up, what I did was I measured a distance from this edge and put a line in place. So this distance is fixed across the model. Then on these 3D prints, I printed a little pointer right here, which when I glued these on, I lined that up with a line. So that assured that the distance from this point to the edge of the roof, from this point right here, which is the top of the line, to the edge of the roof were the same for all 3 of them. And those were just stacked up with some weights and glued on. And then the other piece was glued on. And unfortunately, I forgot to take a picture of that. So you don't get the benefit of seeing that. And what you see here is the next step. So the basic roof was done with plywood. This is 1/16 inch plywood. I added in some additional little space or pieces here to tie the roof pieces together and make sure that I didn't have any light coming through the roof in those areas. Then what I did was added around the roof 1/16 inch scribe siding. So that's actually what you're going to see from outside when you drop the roof into place. And you can kind of see here the holes that were drilled for the 2 lightning rods. And then these are actually brass rods with little 3D printed caps that sit on them to make them look like actual chimneys on the top of the building. So, this is what the roof looks like from the bottom. This is what those look like from the top. They just kind of pop through. The roofing is actually from Etsy. It's a guy on Etsy sells this. They're laser cut shakes. One of the things I found when I looked at a lot of the roofing that you see that's wood roofing, they're fairly thick, which really is something that you didn't see at this time. These were thin cedar shakes. They had access to really good wood back in the day when they built these things. And this stuff actually works out pretty well. So I bought those. They come raw. They were basically colored with black and brown shoe dye and alcohol mixtures, washed with those individually. Just take a piece of newspaper, you wash them with it and lay them out to dry. Then they were glued down with tacky glue. So you kind of see here the line of tacky glue that this row has just been put into. I did not draw lines on here. I'm kind of probably should have put lines on for each individual layer. Would have made it a little bit more uniform. I had a little bit of lack of uniformity in the rows here, but I quite frankly just didn't have the energy to draw individual lines down for the gluing. After I got done putting these on, I decided that I didn't like the way they kind of looked. I recolored some. I got halfway done and I had to recolor another batch to finish up. And they were a little darker. So I ended up staining the whole roof a little bit more to make everything match up. And then did some final weathering with chalks. And I did note, this is really the only place you can see the little gable roof over here. And you can kind of see it's pretty easy to put on. You just glue down that piece of wood you saw in one of the earlier sessions. That's the wall element here. And then once you've got that down, it's easy to measure this distance here and figure out this side of the angle for these 2 pieces. And then you can lay out and measure this side here. And then these were just sanded a little bit so they fit together well on the roof. So this is kind of just what the roof looked like with some final weathering. One of the things that I find is that when you weather roofs and things, you want to weather the basic materials in kind of a random way, because there's, for example, rust tends to rust on individual panels individually, but streaking like mud or bird dropping or other things that drop on the roof tend to streak down across the roof and impact all the different pieces on the roof. So you want to do some weathering individually before you put things on the model, and then some weathering afterwards. So you see the chalk weathering here that's kind of dark that represents streaking, which is different than kind of the individual weathering that's underneath it on the individual shakes. Basically, they didn't have really a cap for these, so I ended up taking these pieces here and ended up taking a bunch of them and cutting them individually apart and creating capstones up here to put on the top of the roof. But all in all, I was pretty happy for a $12 package of roofing that I took about maybe 1.5, maybe 1 2/3 packages to do the roof. So it really wasn't that bad in terms of finishing it. The last thing I wanted to do was put in a little bit of decking, and I was kind of this was a bit of a conflict, quite frankly, because some of the pictures I had, there was no decking. There's no decking around the current structure, obviously. But I did have this early picture, which actually was taken before kind of the time period where I'm modeling, because it doesn't have the little jut out here on the side, where they actually had a deck around the building. So I decided to kind of compromise and put a deck, assume that when they built this addition, they cut the deck off. So they've got a deck on this side, and then I have another little deck on the left side of that. So one of the things when I looked at the building again, you don't see any of the joists underneath or any of the beams underneath the decking here. It's right on the ground, which means they've literally laid the underlying beams right down into the ground. So I decided when I built the model, originally I held the whole thing up about 4 or 5 inches off the ground to the bottom of the door. So what I was able to do is use, these are 3x8 strip wood here, and then I put some 2x4s underneath. And the 2x4s run, you kind of see the tips of them here. They just run underneath to support things, the 3x8s on top. And then when I put this onto the model or onto the layout, it'll actually sit down in their sculpt-a-mold right up to the upper level of the plywood here. So when I put dirt in, the dirt will come right up to the boards. When I do my final dirt installation on the layout, so I'll achieve the same look they have here of kind of the dirt right up to the boards. So this was basically just glued down again with canopy glue. I like that because if you do get anything that squinches out, it's really easy to take care of and it's clear. So basically that is kind of the end of the building. A couple of pictures here of the final building. If you're interested, you can get this presentation by either using the tiny URL NTM Pajaro. That will get you to it, or you can shoot the QR code and you can get a PDF of the presentation of the whole thing, including the breaks and stuff for you. So with it, that's all. I am done, Tom, and it's back to you.
Excellent model, Phil, and prototype. And interesting that it used to be the station for the insane asylum where producers and hosts of New Tracks wind up. Yeah.
Yep. Well, what if it was still open? Now you just end up on the street as a homeless person.
Right. That's next. Great job on that. That a lot of different technologies going in there and good sources. The Etsy for the laser cut roofing. That's another modeler source. Well, next up, we've got Martin Brechbiel, Part 2, the offices of Deckard and Batty, in his Scratch Builder's Corner segment. Before Martin speaks, though, I'd like to run the Observations newsletter video, which he is the editor of.
Get more new tracks modeling by reading the monthly Observations newsletter. Each edition of Observations includes exciting articles about modeling shown on the show, other modeling topics and prototypical railroading information. Other articles focus on outstanding model railroaders and new products from a range of suppliers. Don't miss the photos of the popular New Tracks My Build. You can download Observations for free from the New Tracks modeling website. Subscribe so you don't miss an issue.
Well, as I indicated in the opening, this May Observations newsletter is the last before we switch to the June New Tracks Modeler magazine. And I mean, one thing about doing these things, we need material. And it can't just be Martin, Tom, and every single issue. We need other materials, we need other viewpoints, we need other modelers. It doesn't take much to take one of these PowerPoints and turn it into an article. We'll probably reach 8,500, 8,600 people with our magazine, which is surprising more than the live show. So, Martin, you want to say a few plugs? We do need material, yeah?
Yes, I think you covered that.
Beat it to the ground. Yeah.
The horse is still breathing, but you could hit it some more.
I want to kick it one more time.
Yeah, kick it while it's down, quick.
It'll get up. I know it. Well,
no, the next issue we're fine. After that, the filing cabinet's pretty empty. So that's a hard place to start the first issue of anything with an empty pipeline. So articles would be useful. I know that's a gross understatement, but you know, 3 or 4 articles would be really nice for every issue. And working around with all the other stuff that's normally in our newsletter would make a pretty decent publication. So I'm, you know, please send me, you know, I don't know, some people may have tried to send me stuff. Maybe 2 weeks ago, we found out that the New Tracks email that I have was not forwarding to me appropriately. So some stuff might have gotten lost. If you didn't get an acknowledgement from me, try sending it again now. You know, technology is wonderful when it works.
but that's why we do scratch building. It's anti-technology.
I don't know.
Well, Phil's is not.
Phil's out there doing 3D printing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you know.
We're old school because we're old guys.
Yeah, remind me of that some more. Okay, great. I think I better go to my slides soon before this becomes too maudlin.
Yeah.
And there's some slides. And, oh, that's not quite what we wanted to have happen. Toolbar's in the wrong place as usual. Oh, so is this one. Ah, great. Well, back up. That wasn't backing up. That is. Yes, and tonight we have some fish at the Nighthawks Cafe. It's now an aquarium. It's a lovely place. They make a nice fish sandwich. Okay, so part 2. And there will be a part 3 because I couldn't fit it all in. It'll be a short part 3. Someday, some month, some year, who knows when. But this is where we stopped with 3 out of 4 of the walls put together. This is where we were last week. Long ways to go tonight. I'm dilly-dallying about. Lollygagging again. So up at the top of that wall, I've added some corbels. These are resin castings. I made these a year or 3 ago thinking, these could be useful to have someday, and someday came last month or 2 months ago when I built this, and I thought I should pull these out. They look about right, and whether they are or not about right is irrelevant. They're on the building now, and that's where they're going. And obviously, there's more to be done here. So we've added a top strip here across here, and you can see the top cover of the wall has been added. And also, hey, you can see that's scribe siding that I was mentioned last week that's in the ceiling here. That was just fitted into place. It's just friction holding it there right now. It needs a little shove up into the corner there, but it'll be up nice and tight when you're done. We added the back wall. 4 walls. We need a box. A lot of gluing surfaces added because there's just nothing to tack the roof onto otherwise. These are, I don't know, 3/16 by 3/16. I think it's the last of that balsa that I bought by mistake last year. But it's serving its purpose. It's being put to work. And you can see around the back board here, added back for the roof to sit on. And here's something I like to do because I see this on way too many kits. The back of the false front wall. Usually on a lot of things, it's just blank. And that doesn't make any sense. It's just a blank, smooth, single surface. So I've actually go back and added, usually add some 1/32 thick scribe siding to it and fit it into place, glue it in there. And now there's actually something with some lines and texture and appearance of real siding on the back wall. Had to be something there. So where are we going next? Well, we have some flooring here. It's just some lawn plywood I picked up cheap at an estate sale. 5 or 6 4x8 sheets for $20. How can you go wrong? Getting it into your car is how you go wrong. That doesn't fit usually. And some 1/32 thick basswood. That's going to be our roofing material. We're just going to slap a roof on this, not worry about it too much. And you can see we've also added underneath it a little bit of scribe siding out front on the entranceway, underneath the front half of the building. Well, the front couple of feet of the building, not half. And that gets all glued down onto that plywood. And we'll come back to that eventually. And I neglected to mention, we've got some trim gone on these joints around the corners to cover up some ugly joinery. Some 1x stock, probably HO 1x stock, because it's really nice and thin to work with and fits together neatly and just doesn't feel too overly bulky. I think I use a fair amount of HO 1x stock on my O-scale buildings because 1/2 inch boards just aren't available otherwise. It's not quite a 1/2 inch, but when it gets down to that point, unless you got a micrometer and you're measuring it off the surface of the building, you can't tell. After it's painted, you really can't tell. Okay, so we'll put a roof on. It's just a 32nd thick basswood. Just drops into place with some carpenter's glue on top, a little bit of weight. It's not going anywhere. And we put the other piece on, and the roof's closed up. That was easy. I think it's easy, at least. This is probably the easiest way to put the roof together. It's not going to be removable. I'm not going to worry about that in this model. So, basic painting. So, I've forgotten what color that is. It's a particularly heinous and ugly yellow green. I actually think it's warehouse or olive. Somehow I chanced into a bottle of that, and it's really noxious and unappealing. So it's really perfect for this building. It fits in with the themes that I'm trying to embrace here. Some I forgot which red that is, but there's a little bit of red trim on the front, on the false front, and the corbels, and that'll eventually get on the windows and doors. And you can see it's on the other side here, a little bit of that red. I toyed with droplets of blood, but you know, it's just going to be a little bit of red paint. And On the back wall, which was incredibly boring, I've added a little roof over the back door. That's just some 16th inch scribe siding and a couple of 3x4s holding it in place. A little bit of glue, stick it on the back wall. It's good to go. It's not going anywhere. And again, that little bit of red trim, I think that's a tarnished black. I use a lot of tarnished black now. Plain black is too black. Steam black is too black. Grimy black is more of a gray. Tarnished black is not quite as bad. And I have 6 or 7 bottles of it, polyscale. So I probably have enough for the rest of my life. And that's where we're going to stop this week. We'll finish it up next week. And thank you. If you got questions, now's the time to scream.
Thank you, Martin. And I think the takeaway for me was using the HO get you down to 1/2-inch trim boards, because I use 1x6s or 1x4s for trim, and it's a shade too thick, really, you know.
It just feels too thick. So, you know, back when I was buying bulk amounts of strip wood from Kapler, I bought HO as well as O scale, and I have way too much of both still. So I think it looks better.
I think you're right. And going forward, that's a little trick I'm going to do.
And Phil put up in the chat where to get those shingles from. So now I have to go buy some shingles.
Yeah. Every show I pick up something. I always. Well, thank you very much, Martin. And if you want to finish this up next week, you're welcome to the board.
Oh, goody.
Well, next up, we have the My Build section, with the My Build segment by Chris Course. But before he's on, Model Resource is his sponsor. If we could run that.
Welcome to the world of scale, O and S railroading. We are your resource for all O and S scale modeling. Both our magazines are advertiser supported and free to read online, download as a PDF, or even print. All advertisers are hot linked to their website, so if you see something you like, just click. Please check out our websites for the current issues. All back issues available free for the O-Scale Resource and the S-Scale Resource magazines. And, if you are a manufacturer, distributor, or retail establishment, please contact us through our website for advertising opportunities.
Thank you, Model Resource, O-Scale. They don't actually have the S-Scale magazine anymore, but Chris?
Hello.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. All right. Tonight is, of course, My Build, and it is featuring you, of course, as usual. And today is April 23rd. This month's challenge is animation, automation, make it move. So hoping we would get a lot of responses on this one. Unfortunately, we didn't, but we did have some. So first up is Greg Cassidy. You up, Greg?
Yes, I am. I'm
All right.
not used to being first, but I'm ready.
All right, you beat out Martin, although Martin's already gone. So, all right.
All right. This very short journey started about 25 years ago when I scratch built a little radio tower to go on top of a mountain that I had on one end of my layout. Just the trees up there looked lonely, and something just struck my mind that would be easy to build, so I built one and stuck it up there. And it stayed like that for about 25 years. Next. Then I happened to be on Evans Design's webpage, and I noticed that they had these warning sequence lights. And since they showed it on a radio tower, I said, I've got one of those. Maybe I'll pick those up and see how they do. So I ordered a set of the sequence lights, and I also got a power supply to go with it. And fortunately, my radio tower was not glued down or anything, so I just lifted it off and brought everything to the workbench. Next. The first thing I did was make sure that my power supply worked with the sequence lights. They came as 3 bulbs with wiring that went to the little flasher module, and then 2 power wires that came from that. And the first time I hooked it up, it worked great. I didn't blow anything up, so I was ready to go. Next. So probably the trickiest part of this whole thing was threading the wiring through my tower. I ran some thread down it and tied the LEDs to it, and then carefully pulled it up and managed to get it up without snagging anything or breaking anything. Next. So then once I glued them to the mast of my tower and painted it, I was ready to test it. I had brought them through on what would be the back of the tower, so that part wouldn't really be seen from the front. Next. And lo and behold, they worked. I took a short video of it, and I was happy that they actually lit up and flashed in sequence. So, yeah, I was overjoyed. Next. So now the next trick was how to get the wiring through my big foam mountain. It was really just a big solid piece of foam, and it was about 1 foot thick. So I was lucky enough to have a stash of brass tubing, and this was a square piece that was maybe about 1/8 inch. And it was a little longer than I needed, which was perfect. So I thought, well, I'll use it for a conduit. Next. So the first thing I did was I ran a bamboo skewer through the foam, and it went through fairly easily. Then I took my brass tubing and ran it through, and I did stop pounding before I got it all the way down flat. The little fencing and stuff is left over from when I had the tower sitting up there. But that got the tubing all the way through the foam. Next. And then it was an easy matter of running the wires through, and I had made sure they were long enough that they came out the other end. Next. And then I just put the tower back up in place. I had painted the module black, so it looked like just part of the equipment, and everything was finished up at the top side. Next. So then underneath, where the wiring came out, I connected it to another piece of wiring that went to the plug, and I plugged in my adapter. And then at the other end, where it plugs in the wall, I had a little tiny remote control unit, so I can turn these on and off without having to climb under there. Next.
Oh, I guess that was it.
Oh, well, anyway, the last picture shows them working. And so now I had some animation on my layout other than just moving trains and stuff. And it was really a simple 1-day project, probably a second day climbing underneath to wire it up. But it was very simple and led to a little animation, and now I won't have any planes hitting the tower. Thanks, Chris.
Yep. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, as I was going through this, I was kind of reminded of my my pie in the sky project about the SS Jim Ladd pirate radio station ship that I want to do one of these days. But yeah, it's very neat. Any questions for Greg? All right. Well, thanks, Greg. And
thank you, Chris.
Guess we'll move on to Bernd. Yep,
Yeah,
Bernd.
I'm here.
All right.
All right. What I'm doing here, this is for my HO130 Quarry Railroad. I'm gonna animate the loading of the cars. This was a bin that I built. It actually started out as a bird feeder, but it turned into a bin for the model railroad. Okay, go on to the next one. This is the main setup. I'm putting up a big wall. The bin, you can see the pipe coming out through there, and there's a brass conveyor belt that I'm working on. I still got to animate that. That's leaning up against where the bins will be to be loaded. I plan on bringing in the quarried rock, and on the left side of the building, the white area, there'll be a rotary dumper put there to dump out the ore or the rocks. Then it will simulate the crushing of in the building, and then that pipe will bring out what I'm using. It's canary gravel. You can get it at any pet store. It's small enough to make it look like small rocks. And then once I get the bins built on this, it'll be filled up and I'll be able to fill up the cars underneath it. Okay, next one. This was my first attempt at making an auger. That black piece is a piece of Delrin that I actually turned in the lathe with a very rough screw type. I actually made an 8 threads per inch screw to see if I could make an auger, and it seemed to work. Next one. This is it all assembled together, and that's a motor. I'll explain that a little bit further on what I'm using there. I made a little holder to put everything in so I can always put it back in the same place. Okay, the next one. I was looking down into it. What I did is I put 4 pieces of cardboard angled and then attached a small funnel to the bottom to funnel the racks into the auger. Next one. If you mount one of these motors on a piece of wood, they get awful noisy. So what I did is I buried 4 screws in liquid, the rubber molding to quiet it down, and it seemed to have taken the noise down. So on to the next one. This is the motor tightened down on there. It when you run it, it's not very noisy. So on to the next one. This is the planetary gearbox made by Tamiya, and I've got the full complement of the gear set in there, and that will actually rip the gears apart if you try to hold it. And the motor's only, I think, a 3-volt motor, so you'll get a chance to see what this thing looks like at the end. On to the next one. So this is the whole setup. I made put the auger. I made a little adapter to be able to adapt that to the motor, and that's a piece of copper tubing with a hole on the right side for the for loading it in there, and then the auger pushes it out the end. On to the next one.
Hello.
Next one, Chris. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just
I actually went through 3 sets of trials here on making an auger. The black one that I did first had a tendency to pack the gravel in there, and it was actually grinding it and making dust out of it. I think because it was a plastic and it was really, I don't know, Delrin isn't that soft, but the little particles, the stones were actually embedding themselves in the plastic. So what I did is I purchased one of those big augers to cut, or drills to cut through concrete, which had less of a twist on it. And I made a mold and did it in resin and tried that, and I wound up with the same thing again. For some reason, plastic doesn't work too well as an auger with gravel in it. So what I wound up doing was using actually a spring. And where I got this idea was from one of the forums I'm on. There was a couple on there called Nickel Diggers 2. They were a couple from Italy that built a module, and what they did is they simulated a nickel mine and mining ore, and they used springs, and by darn, this thing worked the best of all. So that's what I used. On to the next one. So here's a setup. I made on the right, the brass, I made a connection to the motor, and then the loop that you see there will hold the copper tubing, which is at the bottom, and I cut sort of a oblong square in it to fit underneath the funnel. Next one. To give you an idea how big the hole is for the funnel to sit on. This held pretty good in place, and underneath I embedded it in silicone. So again, it would be kind of keep it quiet. Next one. And this is what it looks like coming out in the end. And Chris, I think the next one is got to be a video showing how this works.
Maybe not.
I
Yeah, I know there's a video in here. I just got to find it. Where did it go? There it is.
No, wrong one. That's for the last segment of this. There
Okay.
should be another one ahead of that showing the auger.
Yeah, it looked to me like there's something missing. I forgot to drop you an email on it. But yeah, I did see a video of that somewhere. I think you'd sent it to me a while ago. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I sent you both of them actually. So, well, if you haven't got it, we'll go on to the next.
All right.
And then the other thing I found out when I built my my little critter shed for the H130 module, I wanted to open and close doors. And I discovered something on one of the videos I watched. I watch a guy that does a machining, and he had something called a Victor acetylene tracing torch. And I got this idea from him. What it is a motor that actually has a magnetic wheel on it, which you see the motor there. That's a 10 RPM, 12-volt motor, and right at the end is a circular magnet, and then to the right of that is I don't know if I had a disc washer. I put a brass fitting in so it would fit on the shaft of the door that's laying in front of this whole thing. And the sheet metal, and back there with the square on, and the other tube, there's where the pipe will fit through. The motor will fit with a screw, and it's sort of loose and pivots, and the magnet will stick to the to that big wheel. So I think, go to the next one, Chris. Okay, this is how it works. This is a very simple setup. All you need is a 12-volt motor and an on and off reversing switch. No electronics or anything, just a plain old 12 volts. You can see it spins around. It closes the door. That's at 12 volts, and the motor's putting out 10 RPM. Now, the best thing about this is when it gets to the end, you'll notice the motor keeps spinning, but the door stops and nothing gets crushed. So it automatically stops. You don't have to program a stop in there. You don't have to have switches or anything. And this is again closing it. I want to do that to my critter building once I determine more how to make the hinges for the doors. So I think that's the last one then. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it's too bad you haven't got that other one.
Yeah, I'll go through after we close out the screen share and see if
I'm going to put in the chat. I'm going to put in
the link to it.
a link to the nickel diggers. They're on the Flickr. They have a whole 7 pages on there. They have animation on there, and they show how they did their augers and everything like that. And the other one for the Victor torch is on there too. It's a 22-minute long video. You can go through it and find the spot where he shows how the torch uses a master to follow around with that, and you'll get an idea of how I come up with this idea for this animation. So that's it. That's my animation, and I'm sticking to it.
I like your comment there, Rich.
Or yeah, whoever.
How about making an animated beer fridge to fetch them for you?
Oh.
Yeah, very, very creative. That must have taken a lot of thought and time and energy
Well,
to put
that
together.
that that's the best thing about watching video. I sort of look at outside my railroad activities. I'm more interested in machining, so I follow a lot of machining groups. And this guy, when I seen that Victor torch, I go, hey, that's a great idea for a door, you know, for opening and closing. I think I've got other ideas I want to use on this. And another one that I watch is called Click Spring. The guy uses machines to build watches and unbelievable stuff. This is where I get all my enthusiasm from for building something like this. So
Yeah. A few years back, not too long after New Track started, there's a guy by the name of Jeff Bunza that took
yeah,
one
I
of
know him well.
my Gray Street kits, and he animated, I think he animated an attic door or something that opened, and I want to say there was a crane that came out of it. You
Uh,
remember that, Greg?
the crane he did a crane issue on the Model Railroad Hobbyist Forum, which
Yeah.
I built one too. Instead of using DCC though, I use radio control. I do have a whole series on that I did on my website. So
Yeah.
okay,
Well, nice work. Awesome.
thank you.
It's a lot of expert machining there. That's I know it's way beyond me. But does anybody have any questions for Bernd? All right. Well, sounds like it's a quiet night. So thanks, Bernd, and
You're
we
welcome.
look forward to
Thank
seeing
you.
what you can come up with for next time.
Okay.
All right. Next up, Jeff Jordan.
I'm here.
All right.
This will be quick. At first, I didn't think I was going to have anything for animation, but when Chris said that it could look like it was about to move, I said, "Oh, I've got that." I picked up these figures at the narrow gauge convention, and then they are painted using the painting technique that I previously demonstrated. Now, this one is a neat casting because it's both the switch stand and the fellow throwing the switch stand is all one 3D printed part. The only thing I did to it is as it's cast, it doesn't have the white bullseye. And that in the prototype, it should show you the white ball when it's set clear. It goes straight through, and it should show you a red arrow, which it does have when it's set to divert. And so I've got this set up on my layout where it's running straight through. The other thing I did to it is the guy who prints these, for some reason, loves to put bullet holes in the arrows. And I just couldn't abide that, so I filled in the bullet holes. But there it is. And right next door is the actual throw for the turnout. This is way too delicate to be the actual throw for the turnout, but it dresses up the turnout. And then there's another one. That's another shot of this fella, and you can see the arrow there that'll turn to show when the turnout is diverted. I am contemplating putting a shaft down and letting the whole thing rotate, the fella and the target with the turnout throw. But right now it's just for show. And you can see the target and the arrow. And I was happy the way this guy's clothing came out using the simplified technique I had discussed previously, the blue jeans and the leather jacket, particularly. I still got to work a little bit on the faces, but for where he is on the layout, I think it works just fine. And then there's another one. Oh, okay. This is the figure just in primer. It's a beautiful little figure. If you wait till you see the paint, picks out even more of the details, with a harp switch stand, which is terrific for the Rio Grande Southern, though they are very antiquated pieces of equipment. The Rio Grande Southern used some of them right till the end of the railroad. And so this guy is going next to my three-way stub switch with the harp switch stand. And so next picture, probably, oh, that's the other fella, unpainted, including the bullet holes in the arrow.
Jeff,
Notice these are really, really nice 3D prints, by the way. Okay, and here's the other fella. Again, right by the this one's a motorized turnout. You can just see I haven't quite trimmed off all the metal yet, but that operates the three-way turnout remotely. But we've got the guy there with the harp switch stand. Notice the little details in this guy, the gloves sticking out of his back pocket and the cigar. These are, by the way, O scale figures.
Okay. All right.
And I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it. These are quite a find. I mean, those are very nicely detailed figures.
Yeah. Steve may remember the name of the fellow. He's the fellow who's at the narrow gauge convention. He does 3D prints. And a lot of the people that are in the 3D prints are actually members of the Mid-Hudson group, dressed up for the figures. At the show, everybody who bought a couple of figures got an Alan Littlefield as well.
Yeah.
Are they Les Davis figures?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a bunch of his figures on my layout now, and I actually have two more of his turnout stands. And then at the most recent show, he had the turnout stands with the figures attached, and throwing the turnout stands. And I had a couple of turnouts. I thought that would really fit in. So there they are.
Beautiful stuff. All right. Any questions for Jeff? Well, thanks for sharing, Jeff. It was a quiet and quick show tonight. So I guess sometimes you need that. But all right, so coming up, the upcoming My Builds, challenges, shows, etc. May 28th is a free-for-all, so anything goes. Whatever you've got, whatever you're working on, please share it with us, and we'll be sure to get those included. Please get those to me by May 25th, and email those to me at railrunner130@hotmail.com. And also starting May 28th, we will have elections for future challenge themes. We will start that, and then followed that, we're going to leave that window open for a while so we can get as big a picture as we can get from people on votes, etc., for the next year's My Build challenges. And then June 21st will be the theme will be water. It'll be waterfronts, boats, bridges, etc. Then we'll go into election results from the challenge themes, and the submission deadline for that is June 18th. But if you have your waterfront stuff ready now, go ahead and send them to me, and I'll just put them in the June folder, and we can hold on to them. I noticed, I was looking at my calendar last night, and it looks like the next month or so is going to be kind of hodgepodge of whether I'm here or not, because I've got some different things going on at work. But in fact, I should have the opportunity to go down and see. My gosh, sorry, I'm brain farting here. Go down and see. Oh my gosh!
Can't help you.
Oh.
Well, we can come.
Bill, Arizona.
Bill Stimson?
Yes, Bill Stimson. I'm sorry. Sorry, Bill. I'm just had a brain fart there. I'm terrible with names. But anyway, I'm looking to see Bill Stimson in a couple weeks. But anyway, in the meantime, please get those photos to me, get those challenge ideas, and we'll get them rolling in May. We've got a bunch now, a bunch of ideas, but the more the merrier, and we'll make it all work. So thanks everybody for participating, and I'll turn it back over to you, Tom.
Chris, thank you for everything you do on the show. And yeah, we didn't have a lot of participation in the My Build this evening, so we're going to end a little early this evening. We're going to have Father Ron close the show, and then we have an interesting Caboose called the Shibata high-speed rail coupler. Before we have Father Ron for the closing, I'd like to run the New Tracks Facebook video.
Does it seem like eternity waiting for the next Wednesday night and a New Tracks event? Now there is hope. The New Tracks Modeling Facebook page gets you into the New Tracks community 24/7. Post, respond, and converse with over 1,200 avid model railroaders on Facebook. Show your modeling, ask questions and help others. Join now, it is free and easy. Use the link or QR code to open the Facebook page.
On. Just a couple words on the show. We really need the participation of our viewers. This is a strictly volunteer program, and the danger of these programs is that it becomes the regulars, which they're all fine modelers, but we like a little diversification. We've got big numbers. The live show gets 250, 350 views within a week of its showing. We've got 8,600 subscribers to the Observations newsletter. We've got 1,200 people on the Facebook page. Those Zoomers on here and the YouTubers take a shot at presenting or doing an article. It's really not that difficult. It doesn't take that much time to put together a PowerPoint for the show, and I offer my assistance. All you have to do is take snapshots, and I'll crop them, fix them up, drop them into PowerPoint, and give you a professional presentation. We need the material, we need the diversification. We got some fine modelers on here, Phil, Martin, myself, but we need diversification. We need other viewpoints. So some of you that have participated in the past, I ask you to contact me and let's see if we can get you on the show. And then if you have an article or something in mind for an article, maybe you don't want to do a live show. We could use articles for our premiere issue of New Tracks Modeling magazine. Anyway, that's tonight's show. I'd like our traditional closing with perhaps my favorite modeler, Father Ron. Father Ron, if you would.
Oh God, as we create in miniature the world around us, may we marvel at the beauty and genius which created the world and instilled in us a portion of your great knowledge and wisdom. Give success to the work of our hands, O God. Amen.
Thank you, Father Ron, and appreciate your contributions to the show. Next, Phil has our Caboose, which I believe is the Shibata high-speed rail coupler. This is quite fascinating. Phil?
Dude.
You know, the Japanese bullet trains have been around for since the 60s. And I've never rode a Japanese bullet train, even though I've been to Japan, but I have been on the TGIV in France and the German ICE train. I've not been on the Acela, the Amtrak high-speed rail between Boston and DC. It would be kind of interesting just to compare all the different couplers. That was a really unique piece of technology there. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the couplers on these other high-speed trains, but that would have the makings of a very interesting presentation or article for our newsletter. All it takes is the ability to do Google searches and pop photos into a PowerPoint, just to give you an idea. Anyway, that's our show for tonight. Thank you for those who participated. Bernie Kritzer, Phil, Martin, Chris Corse, of course, and Father Ron. Have a good evening.
Tom, I just sent you a message.